are. Hey, everybody. Welcome to UGA Sports Live podcast. My name is Ronnie DeBolse. I'm joined by Dane Young, Jake Roos, and, of course, His Highness himself, the Hall of Famer Jim Donnan, former Georgia Bulldogs head coach. And the main reason everybody's tuning in, our man Dave McMahon is in the building as well. He's the one that kind of feeds me all the stats. And our folks here at Classic City Eats, where I'm sitting, pretty much feed me. So the only reason we do the show is so I can get free beer and food here at Classic City Eats. That's the deal. If we didn't have that, we would not be doing the show. So Dane, Coach Donnan, and Jake Roos are all out of luck because all the good food is here. I'm going to have their dry rub wings here in a minute. So I only get to talk for about 10 minutes, so I'm going to start the show with a quick monologue stating big shout out to all of our sponsors who keep the lights on, and we appreciate them. That's it for my monologue. I want to jump right into this past Saturday's game. Georgia dominates Auburn in pretty much all phases of the game. After the contest, Malzahn comes out and says, "Hey, we got whipped, we got out-coached," and I think that's was quite evident. It's not trying to be partisan. That's just being 27-6 when it could have been worse. Georgia shot themselves in the foot numerous times. Pretty impressive game. I know we have a lot of questions about that game. We have a lot of questions about the upcoming Tennessee game. But as we do each week, I want to start off with Coach Donnan to kind of get his overall thoughts. If you saw the watch along, you saw Coach Donnan calling plays and just absolutely killing it from the analysis standpoint. But Coach, for the people who missed the watch along, kind of give us your overall thoughts.
Well, I heard Gus Malzahn walking off the field saying, "We got the dog crap beat out of us." No. For everybody who remembers a couple years ago, that's what he said they did to us. But it's pretty much a butt whipping, and great preparation by Coach Smart, the staff, everybody. We just tuned in, and it looked like a very confident team. And as we've talked about throughout the whole COVID situation, the one real plus for our team that I think is going to really pay dividends is, even though our offense isn't as far along as everybody would like for it to be, I think the fact that they've gone against our defense every day for now almost 3 months is really going to pay tremendous dividends down the stretch, particularly this week and next week against teams that run similar styles to us. And even though they got quality players, it's not going to be like they're looking at anything different. So hats off to a lot of people, but the main thing is your own scholarship to play football up to your ability. We didn't do it last week in a lot of ways, but this week we certainly did. And I'm looking forward to building some momentum, also building a little bit of pride in the fact that, you only get a chance to have a team, a cohesive team that's everybody's on this team for 1 year, but I know that our players feel like that this can be a special year for them.
Coach, I wanted to ask you, looking back on last weekend's game as compared to Arkansas, was there one area that you felt like was just leaps and bounds better? I mean, I know that, like you said, there was progression in each and every one, but I know a lot of people felt like the offensive line gelled a lot better. The running game was stronger. Stetson Bennett was crisp throughout. It looked like the defensive backs did a great job containing those explosive wide receivers for Auburn. I mean, was there one of those areas, though, that you felt kind of came a little further from week 1 to week 2?
Well, we've said going into the game that controlling the line of scrimmage was going to be paramount for both teams. The fact that if you can run the ball, that really opens up a lot of avenues. And if you can't, it closes a lot of them and makes it look like, you're always running for your life like Nick's did. So I don't know that we improved that much in the offensive line as much as we improved our rhythm from the standpoint we made enough first downs where we were confident enough to stick with our game plan and not have to, really ad lib a little bit, which you do that when you have a quarter and a half like we did with penalties. So I don't know that we were ad libbing. That's probably a poor word, but just the fact that our defense assaulted them early. They started out the game with 2 penalties, even though we had a couple on the punt, but really put them in the harm's way where they couldn't get any rhythm coming off their own boundary. And then the next series, we take it the length of the field. So in a game like this, establishing the line of scrimmage was huge. And then the one thing that was just unreal was the way that Tyson Campbell just completely masked Williams the whole game. I know I heard Roddy talking about that he had made some kind of report. I don't know what the name of it is, but he talked about it on Friday that a real key would be how we defended Williams and how they defended Pickens. And they defended them with a lot of people. And that opened up Kearis Jackson because they did so much double on Pickens. But we went right after Williams the whole game with Tyson Campbell, and he just smoked him. And when your go-to guy gets 3 pass completions and can't get the ball and you can't run it, then that really changes the whole complexion of the game.
Yeah, Jake, the other thing too with the line of scrimmage discussion, when you're comparing to Arkansas, it seems like Arkansas's defensive line and defensive front not quite as bad as everyone thought it might be, because Barry Odom had those boys working against Mississippi State, a team that was explosive against LSU.
Good point, but I'm not going to go and be Mr. Negative all the way, but they played an 8, dropped 8 and rushed 3 the whole game. I don't know that their D-line was that dominant, but it was certainly efficient, and it looked better than what we saw from Auburn. I think key injuries to Auburn with Britt being up and down a little bit and then Monken get kicked out of the game helped us some. But I can guarantee you one thing, they had a good plan for Mississippi State, and they made them execute. I think that's the way. That's what we did the second half against Drew Brees. You just drop 8 and make them throw the ball in front of you, and they're going to miss some, and you can tackle. But that's a great win for Arkansas. And, their D-line to me is very good, Dane. But I think in this game they maybe dropped a little bit more. Maybe you can get a film don't lie on that one where y'all can really check it out. And I'm going to tell you this one thing. I've talked more than I'm supposed to. But that feature that you have on our site even makes my mouth water, because I've watched a lot of tape, but you guys really pick it apart. And for just the regular fan or the advanced fan, it's a tremendous feature that I haven't seen many people have out there. So great job by you and Brent.
All right there. Coach is no longer on the show. He can't remember my 3-2-1 reports. So we said, remember the film don't lie. Man, that sucks. All right, but that is a good point. The Film Don't Lie series that we have at UGASports.com is very popular. It has the clips, and then Brent Rollins, who works for Pro Football Focus, breaks it down. Dane, who's covered football and been in media forever, he also breaks them down. So you see these great aspects of the games that you may not see. Also want to point out a new feature we have, we've had in the last 2 weeks, and it's 3 plays that you may not have noticed. Now, I understand you watched the game, you saw all the plays, but there are plays that set up the touchdown runs. There are plays that set up, converting a 3rd and 5. That, a lot of people maybe don't think much of it. You picked up 6 yards, but on the following play or so, you scored. One of those was a pass to Zamir White out of the backfield where he got down to the 2. One play later, they bring the jumbo package, cram it down Auburn's throat. Now, outcome's different. I know a lot of people saw the rollouts. Coach Donnan pointed this out on the watch-along party. The rollout that Stetson Bennett had with Big Cat Bryant just bearing down on it. And it looked like he was going to die, And he rolls out and makes huge pass play. And granted, that one makes the highlights. So there's one play that you may not notice and one play that you're going to see on every ESPN highlight. And I thought that there were a lot of those hidden plays, and Jason Butt has them at the front page of UGASports.com. I want to get our resident mailman expert in on this next section here. Let's go to Jake Roos, who's been following Stetson Bennett since he was sophomore, junior, I don't know, a long time ago. Yeah. And the story of the game had to be, of course, the defense, but everyone was talking about Stetson Bennett and his performance. Jake, give me your overall thoughts.
I thought Stetson did what we've known Stetson could do. And I said, and I even tweeted during the game, I said, you can count me among the doubters, because I didn't know that this kid could do it against a team like Auburn. That was the question mark I had was, he can do it. I know he can run this offense, but against an SEC defense, the caliber of Auburn, are you going to be able to make it happen? I was really impressed with that. But I will say the things that he was doing out there, the things that we've seen him do consistently throughout his career, that rollout play, if you go over and check my Twitter, and we put it on the Bennett, UGAsports.com. There's a video of him doing almost the exact same thing during Rising Seniors practice. He rolls out to his left and just drops a dart over to the left sideline. So, we've seen that before out of him. He was a guy, too, I was reminded yesterday and looking back over some of that Rising Seniors stuff that we surveyed all the players and they said, yeah, without a doubt, Stetson Bennett is the most underrated guy here. Players know players. It was very clear that it was a situation where he was well respected by his peers, and those guys were buying into what he was able to do. I think, too, you have to feel good about the fact that, Stetson deserves all the credit in the world. Certainly, though, a fine recruiting job by Kirby Smart and the offensive staff to go out, bring him back into the fold, knowing what you've got in the kid and knowing that he could handle the load. And I think that, Roddy, you tweeted that GIF last night of him and Kirby on the sidelines. You have to think Kirby is, feeling as good for Stetson, I think, as anybody in the nation. He's got to be thrilled for what's happening to that kid because he really is living a dream. It was something he's talked about throughout his career. I spoke to his father about it a few times back during the day. And even when he was first on the Georgia team, he said, all he's ever wanted to do was play quarterback for the University of Georgia. Even at 3 years old, throwing a football in the backyard, that was what he wanted to do. And so that's just kind of the story you live for. It's what makes college football great. And so it's awesome, but at the same time, not a total surprise.
Here's something that I want to make very vivid to our fans here that of course, I don't read the board or anything except what you guys tell me and everything, but there's been some people that said that they were concerned about Stetson's arm. And I think the reason they are is because he did underthrow Kearis Jackson on that throw, okay? I can tell you firsthand, what time is it right now, 12:20?
12:15.
This guy has got a dynamite arm. He's got a huge arm. He's got a factor arm. He's got a 10 on a 10 arm. He is strong-armed guy. So anybody just naturally thinks because he's not very tall that he doesn't have a strong arm, you are wrong. Completely. 100.
What do you know about quarterbacks? What do you know about quarterbacks?
So his arm is not the issue. His accuracy is not the issue. His quickness is not the issue. The fact that he can get us in the right play is not the issue and is the big issue why he's playing. He has so much more experience than anybody here of running an offense that we run. Dwan hadn't had that experience, hadn't had those reps. Beck hasn't. Daniel hadn't run it. He can get you in the right play. Just like on the goal line. We had 1st and 5, and I got mad because we threw the ball, but it was an RPO, and it's based on the front. You can hand the ball to Williams. To White. You can throw the ball into the boundary to Pickens, or you can throw the ball on the fade to Burton to the field. Burton ran an out instead of a fade, and we didn't hit it. So it looked like a bad call, but it was a good RPO for us because of what they had on the front. So that's my rant today. Remember this. Pretend Bulldog Bob said it because somebody said that guy knows a lot. This guy has an arm that is as good as anybody in the league. I'm talking about Kyle Trask, Costello, Matt Jones, anybody. His arm next to Eason, maybe Fields, in the last 3 or 4 years, as good as anybody we've had around here.
I mean, that goes back to the like I said, I've told the story countless times, and I'll tell it forever. When Eason and Fromm were battling back and forth, I spoke to somebody who was at every practice, and we're all trying to figure out who's going to be the guy. Eason had already started, and everyone figured Eason would be the starter for year 2, his sophomore year, but everyone thought maybe Fromm could catch him because Fromm's another 5-star coming in, and the guy that was at every practice. I'm not going to tell you if he was a coach or if he was a trainer, if he was a referee or if he was a player himself or a player's dad or a big donor. I'm not going to say who it was, but this guy was at every practice. And he said, Roddy, I would start that kid Stetson Bennett. And the players were raving about him then. The scout team guys are like, it's going to be the first string defense was talking about the scout team. This guy's killing us, So I think people need to realize that arm is legit. His recognition of defenses is legit. He gets you into the right call. And what does Kirby Smart want? He wants a known quantity. He wants to know what can my guy do and can he make the right decisions? It's all about ball security. So that leads me to the obvious question, Dane Young. Dane, is Stetson the quarterback week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6? How does this work out going forward in your mind?
Or the foreseeable future. I think that's what you have to say. I mean, he's earned that. I mean,
go, Kirby. You've been to the Kirby Smart School of Media training.
If you want me to put a number on it, it's unless he gets hurt at this point, or something.
Yeah, I'm trying to pin you down. I want a prediction that we can make fun of you for later. So please go ahead.
Because, like, here's the thing. I thought that Stetson Bennett was going to be the least risky. I thought it was going to be the safe play. I thought it was going to be some more risk management from that Terry School of Business that Kirby Smart went to. It's not that. And I was surprised by that, but I had not seen him play as much. Really, most fans have not seen Stetson Bennett play a whole lot of football. And this guy is a playmaker. But I think it's the combination of his playmaking, but also he's got this calm, coach used the word poise with him. Just his demeanor, I think, is really good for Georgia's offense to be able to. Your quarterback won at Georgia. There's a lot of attention. There's a lot of people talking. There's a lot of stuff that goes with that. And the way that Kirk Herbstreit said it in the broadcast, he's like, I don't even know if this kid smiles. He just seems to kind of take it in as it comes, be calm back there in the huddle, get the team where it needs to be, like Coach was saying. And I think that is really good for Georgia right now. Right place, right time. He didn't get a lot of first-team reps leading up to this season, but none of that matters at this point. Stetson Bennett's QB1.
Here's the reason you would say, and I'll let Jake. Here's the reason you'd say it's just not wrapped in concrete is because Dwan's so good, and because JT has some experience and has a lot of talent throwing the football. So it's not like he's distanced himself from those guys. Dwan basically beat him out based on the 25 days of practice. So just because of 2 bad quarters, you're not going to say, "Hey, Dwan, you're history." So. Dwan has a big upside now. He really does. So I think as high as I am on Stetson, and I want to make sure, I think you got to realize that it's kind of like the young kid over at Alabama. As good as Mac Jones is playing, that young kid was the #1 quarterback in the country last year. So you just don't, you want to go by how your team's playing, but we got a good situation there now that Daniels is coming along with his leg, and Dwan certainly kind of got a tough deal. I mean, hey, that's the way it is. I mean, sometimes a guy gets a shot and he takes over like Fromm did for Eason, and you can't get the job back. But let's don't forget about Dwan. And then, of course, Beck has some potential too.
I can't believe that we're talking about Dwan Mathis, Stetson Bennett in the same way that we talked about Jacob Eason, Jake Fromm. That's just a wild comparison. I get what you're saying, and I'm not saying you're wrong at all, but it's just an interesting comparison to hear. I wanted to say too, though, that I'm interested to see, because we haven't yet, and I'm not saying I'm worried about this necessarily from Stetson, because he does have that calm demeanor, like you mentioned, Dane. But I do want to see him kind of face some adversity and see how he responds to that. He hasn't had to do that a lot in these first 2 games, obviously, in the situations he's been put in. I'm not concerned about that. Like I said, I think that he's got the demeanor to handle that. But I do think that will be telling as far as, how far this can go.
That's a good point. But I would say that adversity, hey, you come to Georgia as a walk-on, you think you're going to get a chance to play. You don't get a chance, you leave and go to JUCO and don't think you're coming back. Then they give you a scholarship, and then you don't get Jack playing last year because we're sitting on every lead. You don't get to play. Then they sign 2 guys that come in, and it doesn't look like you're going to get a chance in the first game. Nobody even mentions you. Hey, adversity causes some men to break, others to break records. This guy broke the record on hanging in there.
Pressure make diamond.
He also broke the ankles of a certain Big Cat Bryant, who came flying in ready to take his head off, and he ducked out of that pretty well. So I was quite impressed. We have a lot of questions. We will get to them here in a minute. I do want to mention some of our sponsors. Right off the bat, I got to talk about our friends over at Your Pie. Tons and tons of locations throughout the Southeast, and should be going coast to coast before too long. They have a new pizza out of Your Pie that you really have to try. It's called the Hot Honey Pepperoni Pizza. So you take, you go out there and you choose whatever crust you want. They have a bunch of different ones. They even have a cauliflower crust, for you keto people. You put marinara on it, then you put on these pepperonis, then you put these peppadew peppers on top of it, house-picked jalapenos, feta cheese, if you like feta like me, mozzarella cheese, fresh basil, and then they drizzle it with Mike's Hot Honey. This is a fantastic pizza. You definitely have to try it. You're absolutely going to love it. One of the best things out there. So I recommend highly swinging by any of the 50, 70 plus Your Pie locations, get one, and do it on the app and get the free points, because you get a lot of free pizzas that way, a lot of free gelatos, a lot of free breadsticks, the sandwiches they have, the salads, the custom pasta. You can go out and say, look, I want pasta and I want all this stuff thrown into it, and they'll make that for you. So check out our friends at Your Pie Pizza. Drew and Natalie French, two huge Georgia fans. They're I can't say enough about them and their support of the University of Georgia and the support of our website. And I want to mention one of our newer advertisers, and that's Masada Leather and Gifts. Irvin's been running Masada Leather and Gifts in Athens since 1975, almost as long as I've been alive. They do belts, bags, custom sandals, Birkenstocks, all sorts of fantastic things. It is October. You're starting to get into the holiday season. You're going to be needing gifts for people. You can't keep getting them Target gift cards, because that is about as personable as, a gift card. I mean, it's just horrible. You're not thinking about something. You're doing something out of convience.
You gave me a gift card last year.
Did I? I shouldn't. No. I don't know why. I was about to say that's unlike me to do something even that thoughtful. But no, they have these great bags out there, and I'm looking at this Outlander Messenger bag, and I'm thinking, if you have somebody in your family that wants a fantastic leather bag that has a lifetime warranty, it's not something you give it to them and then 4 years later, like, oh no, the nylon webbing is broken or the straps messed up or something like that. If you get them that cool Churchill or the Pym, the little small bag, for these great leather bags, or get them some Birkenstocks, the stuff that they make at Irvin's Masada Leather, lifetime warranty on it. So if you have any problems with it, take it back there. They will fix it. So they're right there in the 5 Points section of Athens, between the Royal Peasant and Earth Fair. Can't miss them. Pop in over there and then go to the Peasant, get something to eat, or swing by Earth Fair, get your groceries. But it's about the time to get some good gifts, and go now before they run out. So I want to mention those two. Jake, take us into the questions while I start hitting these dry rubbed wings here.
Well, I'm excited because I get to be the mailman now. Let's see. This was a couple good ones here from one of our guys who's been on the site a long time. That's Boom MF Dog. He's always got some great questions. He says, thoughts on Monken through 2 games. What have you guys seen from him? What have you liked? How has he adapted to this? Coach, I guess we'll start with you. Obviously, I think people were pretty impressed with the game plan he put together the other night. What did you see out of Coach Monken?
Well, the one thing that's impressive to me is the mechanics of the game. I mean, we haven't had any problems about delay a game or getting people confused or guys lining up on the wrong side. Some things you see with teams. Occasionally you might see 1 or 2 guys you have to move over, but just the flow of the game, the process shows a confident play caller, and the fact that you never have trouble with a 25-second clock, or you don't have trouble with subs and things like that. And I think as things progress and gets more used to our personnel, he'll branch out maybe a little bit. We haven't thrown a lot on first down this year, but we've had an inordinate amount of third down conversions particularly under Stetson being in there. And I think the main thing is our play action game is going to really help us as we progress, and hopefully, even though Fitzpatrick's done a good job, McKitty will give us another guy in the middle of the field that can stretch it when he gets back too. So I would say I'd give him a good grade, but a lot of it has to do with the other coaches too. All of them fit in, and I give Luke a lot of credit for everybody chewing on our O-line, and our O-line took it to task this last week and came out with a lot of fire in their britches.
Dane, you saw every game last year. I mean, you guys did Film Don't Lie last year. You've done Film Don't Lie for the first 2 games this year. what are the differences that you're seeing when you guys are breaking this film down and what Todd Monken's doing?
Yeah, coach mentions the play action. And it's not that Georgia hasn't run RPO in the past. Georgia definitely has, but the success of the RPOs that we've seen and the options that are out there, it just sets up a wealth of possibilities as the skill players get more comfortable in what they're doing. You got to remember, a lot of these skill guys are young. I mean, you're talking Darnell Washington, true freshman tight end. This will be his third game against Tennessee. John Fitzpatrick, while he's played a little bit, I mean, that's still your primary tight ends are both very young in terms of game experience. Same with half of the receivers that are out there. The most important player on this offense is still George Pickens. And if you want to know why Kearis Jackson was open as often as he was, it's because Auburn shaded that defense to cover George Pickens, as any smart defense should. And he's just that kind of playmaker. Now, I will say there's a couple effort situations that you can go back and look on the tape. There's a block that George Pickens didn't really make. There is the Landers play that a lot of people want to talk about. There's a couple of those little small things that are the difference in a really good team and a championship team. And blocking on the edge can sometimes be the difference in 7 points for a James Cook swing pass that then breaks open. And so if those little things, I promise you coaches see those way faster than we do. If those little things get corrected, the offense has potential to be quite explosive, I think.
That kind of reminds me, Coach was calling out a lot of this stuff in our watch along party, and you absolutely need to check that out. Be sure to follow us on YouTube. We usually start about 15 minutes before kickoff, and Coach was calling plays and showing us analysis. And it's a very humbling experience to point out something on the that you see in the broadcast and have Coach explain why you're completely wrong. And you learn a lot. So it's fantastic to have him do that. To your question there, Jake, about Todd Monken and MFers Dog, what do we see? I think it's a bit too early to make any assumptions about what he's doing right, what he's doing wrong. But I do want to give him credit for this. He picked the quarterback. He gets up there in that first game. They have tons of penalties, tons of errors. Quarterback's not getting it done. They make a change. It works out. He has so many questions on the offensive line, so many questions at tight end, so many questions at quarterback. He doesn't know the personnel, didn't get a spin spring with him. 25 practices is great, but it's not nearly as much as he would like. So I give him credit for adjusting and learning quickly on the fly what his guys are capable of. You see him try things, and when they work, he comes back to them. So I give Todd Monken the credit of having a flexible mind in that, hey, I'm not going to impose my will on what these guys are going to do. I'm going to take what they give me, and he's having to learn what they'll give him. So I think the sky's the limit right now for that offense, and I don't think there's a lot that you can criticize right now because, as Coach pointed out, you saw how that offensive line blocked in week 1. The way they blocked in week 2 was night and day. Shout out to Big Ben Cleveland getting the SEC offensive line player of the week for a guy who, when he left the game, thought he didn't do that well, which I don't know why. He was crushing people. I think he has just a preternatural hatred of Auburn for some reason. He just absolutely goes off every Auburn game, kind of like Solomon Kinley would do in Florida. So I think it'll be I think for the Todd Monken question, you have to say, it's a little too early to tell, but I like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I would also point out, too, the point that I made earlier in the year, that offensively we don't have a lot of guys back that really were heavy contributors from last year's team.
Right.
We lost a lot of people, and obviously everybody wants to see you reload. So I can see, like I said earlier, that be patient. We're going to develop. We're going to keep improving and improving as everybody gets more adept at what he wants and all that. But except for Pickens and, maybe a little bit White and Cook, we lose Blaylock. So, I mean, who would you say is your go-to guy there that's done a lot? So, and then in the O-line, you had Hill and Schaefer in Cleveland. But so I think we're going to see a lot more. We can't answer about Monken that much more. But the other thing that's just been so overwhelming is the way our defense has stepped up the pressure. We talked about our coverage on the back end was going to be so much more cohesive and everything that's ever been. And you add that to that pressure package we got. I mean, I guarantee you there's a lot of teams going to have some sleepless nights trying to prepare for that.
Coach, I wanted to get to this follow-up question here. going in or looking at last weekend's performance, and I throw this to everybody actually. It was from Boom, so I thought that he had a couple good ones this week. He said, was last week a side effect of Georgia being really good, or is Auburn maybe as bad as they looked, and they're going to have some struggles this year?
Yeah, I think for the next 30 minutes here, myself, number one, let's just keep these answers under a minute like we're on ESPN, got to go to commercial. I would say a little bit of both. I talked about before the game over here at my house with our two cohorts here that I thought we were going to really get after them because I didn't feel like after watching their Kentucky tape that they had near the defense that they had, and I knew they didn't have the O-line with all of it. So it's a little bit of them not being quite as good and us not being quite as bad as we looked against Arkansas, in my opinion.
I think it's that, but like when you have that kind of performance against a Kevin Steele defense, Auburn's defense has been among the best in the SEC the last few seasons. Now, it lost a lot. It definitely did. But still, that's a statement game. I think that was one of the more impressive games of Kirby Smart's tenure at Georgia.
Yeah, also point out the fact that Auburn was playing without Smoke Monday, and I think, Jalen Simpson was also out. So they were without some of the better players on that defense. So I think that they will be a bigger headache for some other teams down the line, but I don't think we can discount how big a deal it was for them to lose Smoke Monday right at the very beginning of the game. That I think that kind of changed the outlook a lot. And shout out to when you lose Richard LeCount to have Chris come in and just play fantastic. I thought that was a big deal for Chris Smith to come in and play so well. So
happy for him. Another kid who waited his turn, man.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember getting questions, is Chris Smith still on the team? I've got the same question about guys like William Poole and Trey Blunt. And I'm like, yeah, they're there. They're the Nate McBrides that are the grease that keeps this team running. They provide your depth. And in COVID year, depth is important, and then in the targeting era, when you hit a guy and he kind of ducks at the last second, and it's not to say one way or the other about Richard LeCount's hit, but you've got to have guys that can step in. And you've seen it when you lose a big outside linebacker, defensive tackle, or something like that, and you don't have a good guy behind them, then the defense just gets raked. And I thought Chris Smith did a great job.
Well, that's why we, in Film Don't Lie, Roddy, we pointed out that Nakobe Dean and Monty Rice were so crucial in communication when Chris Smith came in. And we pointed out, I mean, we started before the play and show what Nakobe was orchestrating and how Monty ran over to cover a receiver. It was beautiful how the defense responded, losing one of its, most vocal and biggest playmakers.
Hey, Jake, before you get to that question, I want to go to Coach Donnan with two things that just blew my mind Saturday. And if I don't ask him now, I'll forget about them. Coach, I want your thoughts on these two things. We saw a situation where Trayvon Walker peeled off into coverage to cover a running back, Tank Bigsby, on a pass play. That's 270, 290 pounds peeling off in coverage. And then we saw that jumbo package where Georgia brought in Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis as a tight end and a fullback twice to get 1-yard touchdown runs. Give me your thoughts on those two things, because that to me was fun football to watch.
Well, we've talked about our packages where we have that we use, and certainly we use that one on third down or second and long, where we put in a lot of different skill players on defense, and Trayvon ends up being on an outside situation. Most of the time he's going to rush the passer. But if you bring a extra guy from the secondary in, we play a lot of man under, 3 deep, stuff like that, 3-man rush, 4-man rush, 5. But if you have a outside guy, somebody's got to be responsible for it. And it ended up in that case, it was Trayvon. And the fact that we know he can cover kickoffs, we know he's fast enough to at least eliminate a big play. And that's what he did on Tank. He closed on him and played the right technique. And that's like the third thing that can happen on that package. If you don't get the pressure, then the next thing you got to worry about is a scramble. And then the third thing would be a check down. Anderson's responsible for the scramble. The check down would have been the last thing. So they got through with the two of them, and they saw Tank late and great coverage. As far as the jumbo package, awesome. That emanates from the pro background that Coach Monken has, when you can't take so many guys on a trip and you have these packages where you need bigger guys for the jumbo And Davis had played some offense in high school, and we've talked about Carter being a tight end, fullback, and so you get that mass over on that left-hand side with both those two guys. And really the play would be dot right, 57 power. And a power play is where you pull the guard and then let the fullback kick out the end, the tight end and tackle block down. But you can call 57 man, where instead of pulling the guard, then the tight end blocks the head up guy, the tackle blocks the tackle, and the fullback leads on the first guy to show. It looked to me like we were running the man concept instead of pulling, and these guys just got on the Burma Road with them. If we ran 56 power or 56 man, it would be to the right.
So what are the chances that we get Jalen Carter in a Wildcat formation? I'm just saying.
Oh, I hope.
I think if they can put that big old Chilardo they had back there, and then we can certainly put Carter back there, that'd be good.
Very fair.
That kid knocked it in there, and I'm sure we got one of those little dump passes to Davis. And you think people won't go crazy if he catches a touchdown pass?
I love the big boy touchdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. I did go back to the questions. I didn't mean to interrupt there, but those two things are just when I remember driving home from Coach Donnan's house after we'd done the watch along party, I kept thinking about that goal line punch in, and then the big Trayvon Walker having to run, step for step with Tank Bigsby and knocking a pass down. I thought that was impressive.
I will say too, one last thing on Auburn. I mentioned this on Twitter the other night, but people need to not forget. Yes, I think that they're struggling comparatively to last year, but a lot of playmakers on that team. That's a quick strike offense when they get rolling. So they are going to give people some fits. I do agree with that, Roddy. Urban Meyer's Heartburn, one of my favorite handles over on the vent at UGASports.com. I just love that one. He came in with a really good one, I thought. He says, Coach, what was the biggest difference that you saw in the offensive line from week 1 to week 2?
Good question.
I would say just the run blocking, the movement we got, and you get a little juice once you get a couple first downs. We didn't run enough plays in the first half against Arkansas because of the penalties, and your play calling is offset with 15-yard penalties or 10-yard penalties, depending on what they were. And normal down, it was just an anomaly. The whole game was an anomaly to me as a coach. It's just not reflective of a normal game, but the way you handle that is the way we did. We didn't panic, and our defense and kicking game kept us in. But I would just say the run blocking was a lot more consistent and a lot more movement.
Dane, anything that stood out to you about the offensive line when you guys watched film?
I mean, I think it was just continuity. They just seemed like they had a bit better communication. Kirby said this on Monday that these are the same guys. It's just a different result. And what's the thing with Kirby Smart is, like, after the Arkansas game, practice is going to feel the same way after that as it did after the Auburn game. Even though the results felt different from an offensive standpoint, Kirby's going to make sure everything feels the same. That's the process that he believes in, right? And, I think that's the case with the offensive line, that there's some talented football players there. Georgia has recruited better than any team probably ever has at offensive line, it seems like, at this point at the last couple of years. It's just been out of this world. So the talent's there. A lot of people are meshing together, and you just have to think they're going to continue to get better as long as they're staying healthy, which is an important point. We're 2 weeks in, and Georgia does not have major injuries that, happened during the season, a couple preseason, but nothing major so far. And that's very impressive and really fortunate for Georgia.
Coach, this one from 83 wide receiver dog, 83 WR dog. I shouldn't assume wide receiver. He could be Warner Robbins. He says, Coach, you've been talking up Stetson for a long time. What did you see that made you feel that way? Obviously, you talked a lot about his arm earlier, but what are some of the things outside of that, I guess, that you've seen out of this kid in practice, and that, from talking to people that you've heard, could make him this guy and make him ready for this moment?
Well, the first thing is I can't really say that I've seen anything this year because I haven't seen anything except what I watched in the on the games. But prior to this, when I could go over there occasionally, one of the things I would always do is watch the defense and talk to Coach Tucker or talk to Coach Lanning about some things. They don't ever ask me much, but I mean, I could see some things once in a while. But the guy that was just down after down, making plays against them with Stetson Bennett. And I know Coach Tucker came out one time and said that Stetson Bennett is a beast. And, one of the hardest things to do for any young player is be a scout team quarterback, because first of all, you don't have a great offensive line working with you. Second, you don't have the best receivers. You don't have and then the worst part about it is if you do make a good play, the coach is going to make the defense run the play again over, and they know exactly what's coming. So it's hard to be very successful about doing that. But just his touch, his arm, his quickness, got good hands, which I think I like the fact that in a game like this, if it's raining Saturday, his hands are big enough to handle the ball. That was an issue with Jake, during the rain games. But the fact that he wanted to hang around and keep competing, and he would compete with those guys on a high level.
In that similar vein, T-Ray 594 wants to know what's Stetson's ceiling. Seems to make good pre-snap reads, gets the ball out quickly and accurately, and seems to just be able to make plays. What are some of his limitations, though? That's not something we've talked a lot about. What can this kid not do, I guess?
I mean, he can move. He's from 4.5 speed on a laser back when he was we went down to Auburn, as a young buck, looking to get a scholarship from them. He went to a quarterback camp there, and he was wearing his mailman, U.S. Postal Service hat, and was fighting to try to make a name for himself at a quarterback camp at Auburn. And they started out with, 15, 17, 20 guys, and they cut it down to like 10, then down to 5, then down to 4. And this unheralded guy, Stetson Bennett, who was lighting it up, the coaches were bloody impressed with him. They didn't offer him a scholarship, and he winds up beating him. But I think when you're looking at the SEC with this defense and those special teams and who Georgia has to play, if you get your playmakers into the right call, get them into the right game, right plan, right play, and you get the ball to the right guys, you can win games. I don't know that you have to, and coaches point out he's got the arm, he's got the ability. I know that everyone bangs on him because he's not 6'4", but I don't want to tag him with game manager because, as Dane says, this kid made plays. So I think, what is the ceiling? I don't know that he'll make it into the NFL, but I think he damn sure could win you an SEC championship and put you in contention to win the title.
Here's the thing. You just look at 2 plays on the season. The 2-point play against Arkansas. I mean, there's not a lot of guys out there that are going to make that play. And then I'm going to play 2 against for sure against Auburn. The flick of the wrist, fade to Pickens, just beautiful. And then the misdirection there when he got pressure early and bailed out to his left and ran to his left. And I mean, you can't coach that. I mean, you can talk all you want to about, hey, if that guy's running in there hard and you just bail out to the left and do a whirling dervish and then turn around and throw the ball sideways. I mean, you practice it, but doing it when the band's playing is difficult.
Hey, Jake, before you get to any other questions, I want to pause for just a second and tell you about an experience I had yesterday. I went out to Athens Ford to get new tires on my Ford Explorer. I've kind of driven the wheels off the thing. So I went out there to get new tires, and I'm in the lobby or the service area, and I realized, like always, they have fantastic Wi-Fi. It'd be very easy to do the show from out there because the Wi-Fi is so good. Place is immaculate. They have separation for all those big, comfy seats they have out there. You can sit here but not there. So everyone's spaced out. All the free Cokes I could drink, and I put a dent in that thing. And then they had snacks. They had snacks in the Xbox. Okay, so you can play video games and eat free snacks. I'm just saying that I think we need to move the UGASports headquarters out to the service area of Athens Ford. It's higher, it's cleaner than the UGASports headquarters is now, and they have snacks and Cokes and better Wi-Fi than what we're used to. So I think we should do that. And if anybody doesn't have a vehicle and you want to swing by our friends at Athens Ford, the new deal they have on eligible Ford certified pre-owned vehicles, of which I've had one. So the certified pre-owns, they feel like they're brand new. They go through them 100+ point inspection. It feels like a fantastic new car. right now, for in the month of October, you can get eligible Ford certified pre-owned vehicles for 1.49% APR financing for 36 months. So for 3 years, you can get this pre-owned vehicle that feels new for 1.49% APR financing for qualified buyers. Can't beat it. Now, if you want a brand new Ford F-150, they're doing those for $14,000 off. If you want a brand new Ford Explorer, $9,000 off those. But check out our friends at Athens Ford for fantastic service. And speaking of service, I'm going to mention our friends over at Aaron Overhead Doors. Their service area is gigantic now. Again, there's probably 40, 50 different towns on here. But just to give you an idea of if you were out there and you need your garage door repaired, installed, fixed, you have a commercial garage door you need put in, you want something custom built, they can do it. So if you're in Gwinnett, Cobb, Barrow, DeKalb, Stevens, Habersham, Jackson, Dawson, North Fulton, Hall, Walton, Forsyth, White, Oconee, Clark, Cherokee, any of those places, hit up our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors, AARON. Ryan, Lucy, and the folks there will take care of you, and they will do a great job.
All right. This is an interesting question just because I wonder if we're all going to be on the same page here. I think we will. Coach, feel free to set this one out if you don't want to answer. But DMB Drew says, I know it's still early in the season, but with LeCount getting ejected in the first half, it got me to wondering, which player has the biggest drop-off going from starter to backup? Which players can UGA not afford to lose? Dane, I'll start with you, man. Anybody that comes, I mean, obviously there's one that jumps out to me, but
I mentioned it earlier, it's George Pickens, and that's only because of what the defense, does based on his talent and ability. He's a guy you cannot leave in one-on-one coverage, and defenses have avoided doing that so far, and it opens up so many other things on George's offense.
Roddy, anybody that jumps off the page to you outside of Pickens?
I'm thinking, and I don't know that it's so much of a drop off because one guy is so much better than the guy behind him. But right now, if I'm a Georgia fan and I'm nervous about losing a guy at a spot, right now I'd be worried about somewhere along the offensive line. Now you got a bunch of guys that can play center. Yes, some good guards interior, but I can't imagine losing a Jamari Sawyer, or a Warren McClendon or a Owen Condon because, the right tackle position hasn't been locked down and the left tackle position was much better this week. But if all of a sudden you're having to spread out you're in need of tackles right now. And it's good to see Tate Ratledge got in the game and, that Broderick Jones has come along. Lindbergh, I think, is repping at right guard. Austin Blasky, he's worked at guard, center, tackle. He's worked at all the spots. There's no, here's the definitive backup left tackle. And, in the right tackle situation, they're kind of going back and forth. You saw McClendon play a half and Condon play a half. That to me is where you have you don't want to lose a guy there. That's just my take on the question.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing outside of Pickens. To me, it's left tackle, I think, because you just you're not really settled into your rotation just yet, although Jamari seems like a guy who's going to be able to hold that down for you over the course of the year. So I don't know who necessarily you plug in behind him if he goes down. Maybe Warren McClendon is a guy who's able to step up into that spot. I could see that as potential. I know there was some, talk about Xavier Truss being able to play right tackle. I think it would require a lot of jumbling around, and it's not something that Georgia wants to have to deal with, especially coming off of the performance that they just had.
Coach, I'll give you one more. I'll give you one more, Jake. Jake Camarda.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Don't hate on Bill Rubb, right?
We got a good punter behind him, though. I mean, Jake's doing a great job, but this kid can really punt in practice.
All right, I wanted to get to this one. Speaking of offensive lines, Coach, Dog Axe on the board wants to know, from your point of view, how good do you think the Tennessee offensive line is? A lot of people, over in Knoxville think that they are one of the best in the nation, or do they have some weaknesses?
The one thing they do, they've got good bulk. It's the way that Chaney likes to build his offense, those big guys, and they've got some guys that have played, and experience. And they've had, for the first time, I think, in a long time, the same offensive coordinator for the second year in a row that Tennessee's played their whole season. So it's going to be a challenge because they they really do a good job coming off the ball, but I don't know about any weaknesses. I really haven't studied them that much, but Tennessee fans right now, they got to be ecstatic just because of the fact that they've come out of the woodwork, and are doing better. But they got to be ready to come down here and get after a good team on Saturday. It's going to be interesting to see how they do when they're challenged, because I don't really think that the two teams they beat are any real challenge to have a 500 record so far the rest of the year. Do you think Missouri and South Carolina will be 500?
No, not based on what I've seen.
I think they'd both be happy to have that right now.
Yeah.
People say the same thing about Auburn and Arkansas, but Auburn's got a chance maybe. I mean, that was supposedly 7th ranked team in the country, but Auburn's going to have a hard time this year with that unless they rectify their offensive line and get any kind of semblance of a running game. They're going to be searching all year.
Yeah, like you pointed out, Coach, that those A gaps for that Auburn offensive line were those are major freeways on Saturday. Dane, I'm gonna jump in real quick. The line that I saw was Georgia by 2 touchdowns over Tennessee. Is Georgia that much better than Tennessee right now? Do you think 2 touchdowns is right? Generous? Crazy? What?
They're looking to make money in the desert. So I think it's probably a pretty fair line, right? Based on what we've seen from Georgia, because Georgia, everyone said Georgia struggled in the first game. That was still a blowout win by the points against Arkansas.
Only won by 27 though, which was enough to cover.
But people said the same thing. Is the line too big for the Auburn game? And then all of a sudden, look, Georgia's defense, I understand Tennessee's got a great offensive line. I understand Tennessee's got a great quarterback. The way that Georgia's defense is playing, if it can keep the pace that it is, it's going to be tough for any team to score a whole lot of points on them. Even Alabama's high-flying offense. If Alabama were to score 30 on Georgia, I'd be surprised.
Hey, I do want to bring up a question. I know, Jake, you have some others there, but this was asked of me by Brent Hubbs, the fantastic editor at VolQuest. Now, Brent Hubbs, he runs our sister site at Tennessee called VolQuest. It's part of the Rivals Network. I did his podcast yesterday, and he presented me with a very interesting question. And he said, looking at, he's talking about Georgia's defense. Everybody in Knoxville is. All the Tennessee fans are like, how do you attack them? And he kind of asked, he's like, where's the weakness on this Georgia defense? Which group, he knows you got a good secondary. He knows you have good linebackers. He knows you have a good defensive line. But which one is and weakest sounds bad, but it's like, of those 3, which one maybe not as deep? Which one could you attack was his question. And I struggled to answer it because I started going down the depth charts, and you got your secondary, you've got ridiculously talented players, and you don't even have Keely Ringo out there. Outside linebackers, you have Nolan Smith going over to the scout team to get reps because he's having to rotate with too many guys on that starting defense. Your defensive front, with adding Jalen Carter and to Jordan Davis and Malik Herrick, who's ranked, whose PFF grade was the highest of anybody on the team last year. I just couldn't come up with it. So, Coach, if you're Jim Chaney and you're looking at that defense, which group is the least good? Is that the only way I could come up with it? I didn't know how to answer it. So I'm kind of after the fact asking you to answer it for me.
Well, you just went over every player on our team. Is anybody enough to?
You get nothing. You get nothing here, and you like it.
No, I mean, you did a good job of analyzing it there. But I think if I'm an offensive coach playing against a good defensive team, the first thing I talk to my players about, I'm going to get one chance to run this situational play that we're going to try. And everybody's got to execute it to the max, because this is the way I think they'll react, because most good teams aren't going to miss something more than once. So going to show that we got to effectively operate when we got a special situation. The other thing is we've got to make sure that we take care of business with our own mistakes, holding penalties, jumping around, things like that. He'll show them the first part of the Auburn game where everybody was nervous on Auburn and they got those penalties, and that just gives everybody even more juice. So the first thing you got to do is don't beat yourself against a good defense. The next thing is when you get the opportunity, you got to take advantage of it. And third down in a game like this, whether it's third and short or third and medium or third and long, You got to practice that more than you normally do, because those are going to be the situations against a good defense. You can practice second and short and second and medium, but against a good defense, you're not going to get that much. So work really hard on your third down package. And the last thing, short yardage and goal line, you got to practice that double, because you aren't going to get many chances, and make sure what you do in those situations are good enough to operate that you don't beat yourself. I watched last night, Kansas City game, inside the red zone twice. The best coach team in football, Bill Belichick's team, shot themselves in the foot and gave away field goals because of their own mistakes. So when you got a chance to score points against Georgia, whether it's 3 or 7, you got to do it.
That's a good point. Jake, I know you're out there thinking about the mouth-watering players of this upcoming game. I know you're going to spring that on us. I'm not prepared for it, but I will talk about something else that's mouth-watering. Our friends over at Academia Brewing Company have a new cheesecake, and this is a monster, okay? This is the caramel apple and pecan cheesecake that comes from Jack's Cheesecake. It is a limited time only. It is topped with an ungodly amount of caramel, pecans, and spiced apples. If you go out to our friends at Academia Brewing Company, they have these great watch parties. You know, they got all these projector screens up showing the game. They have our watch along out on over there. You get fantastic beers. They always have a new beer out there, and you can get a flight. So you can try 4 or 5 different ones. You can get 2 flights. You can try 8 different beers. Chef-inspired dishes out there. So you actually have a chef. It's not just you hear Academia Brewing Company, you think it's just going to be a beer joint that, a brewery that just has like fries and wings. You know, they got a deep fryer they hadn't changed the oil out on in 57 years. That's not what this place is. This is a fantastic restaurant, one of the best restaurants in the entire Athens area. So you can go out there, have fantastic food with great beer, and now you can try this. And if you don't know the Jack's Cheesecake story, you need to check it out. It's a fantastic backstory there. And they have this monster caramel apples and pecan cheesecake you need to try out. And last but not least, I do want to mention one of our newest advertisers, DR Construction and Renovation. This is Ronnie Brown. If you've listened to the show for years, you know that Ronnie Brown sends us in some of the best questions. We always feature him, not because he's an advertiser, he wasn't advertising with us before, but because he had good questions. And now Ronnie Brown at DR Construction and Renovation, he is servicing Liberty County. Everybody knows where that's from. Long County, which is an actual place, when I've debated that ad nauseum. And of course, Bryan County. So if you're down in South Georgia and you need somebody to do any sort of construction or maintenance or renovation, check out DR Construction. Ronnie Brown, that is our guy. That's the guy you need to check out. He's a giant Georgia fan. I don't know they come any bigger than Ronnie Brown. So shout out to him. All right, hit us up, Jake.
Hey, Jake, I want to interrupt for a second
Yeah.
and give you a question, because this is from the YouTube chat from DogFan3. It's pretty general and just says, can you give us some recruiting scoop? But I want to focus it a bit. There's a guy in Georgia that's really going to care about Georgia playing Tennessee, and that's Amarius Mims. Big month for him, right?
Yeah, definitely. And, actually, I mentioned yesterday over on the vent at UGASports, I think that this really, there's 2 guys that this weekend can kind of be huge for. In the absence of visits, I think that you've got guys watching these games at home and kind of tuning into how these defenses look, how these offenses look, what are they doing. Amarius Mims definitely among them. And then the other guy would be Nyland Green, who we had an update on over the weekend from Chad Simmons. Looks like Georgia and Tennessee, really the 2 that are kind of vying for Nyland right now. So, I think that it's a situation with Amarius. There is a lot of concern around Tennessee. I get that. I think people have made that clear that Tennessee is a very real player in this. They've become a much realer player over the course of time, a much bigger threat to Georgia than I think anybody thought they would be. I'm sticking with my Georgia prediction. I've been predicting that all along. And until I hear something definitively the other way, I'm going to stick with Georgia, primarily just because of the length of time that it's been. I think that he's had a chance to visit Athens so many times. I don't know that there's anybody he's closer with than Brock Vandegrift. I think that plays a huge role as well. The ability to stay close to home is big. So I do still feel good about Amarius Mims. We'll get one more show in before he commits. So hopefully we'll have a chance to give you some scoop on that one next week as well. And then, for Nyland, I think it's a similar situation. Georgia 35 minutes up the road from Newton County. I mean, he's in their backyard. Parents love the idea of him being close. They're cool with him going wherever, but I think that being able to represent for somewhere so close to home is a compelling factor for him. So be interesting, especially to see if Georgia continues to play the way that they have on defense in the secondary, how that factors in with a guy like Nyland Green.
Yeah, and one point I would make there on both these guys is, there's a lot to be said about, people recruiting, who wins the game and all that. But in both instances, we need offensive linemen as much as anything, and we need defensive backs as much as anything. So I'm going to ask all three of you a question about how I feel about those two guys. What's the nickname of Georgia?
Bulldog.
Where are those guys going?
There you go.
Walked right into that one. No,
I love the riddles. All right, let's talk mouth-watering players of the week. Big week here for Georgia. Big SEC matchup as always. Prime slot with the 3:30 CBS game. You're going to have the whole nation tuned into that one. Roddy, I'm coming to you first because you said you didn't know, but now you've had time to think about it. So
you're supposed to go to me last to give me time to assess your answers and to
copy them.
I like
yeah.
it. Yeah. I'm thinking this week I'm going to go with Richard LeCount. I think that I started to go with a defensive frontline guy, a Jalen Carter, Malik Herring going up against those big Chillardos, as Coach Donnan calls them, on the offensive line. But I think that may almost be a stalemate. And then as something goes, I think that Richard LeCount, after being tossed from the game this past week, is going to come into the game with a chip on his shoulder. So would not surprise me to see him pick off a pass or just, pick up a lot of tackles, maybe, just something big. So I think keep an eye on Richard LeCount. 3:30 game, Liberty County, like we were talking about DR maintenance and construction. Liberty County, don't count out Richard LeCount this Saturday.
All right, Coach, I'm coming to you last day. I'm coming to you next, but I'm coming to me first. I'm going with Adam Anderson because I think he's going to be out for blood this week. I think you mentioned the stalemate up front. They're going to need to get some pressure back there, contain the run. I think that he's a guy who can get back there, cause some havoc in the backfield, and create a long day for those volunteers in the backfield. I don't worry about what's going to happen in the secondary. I think that they've got the guys to shut down the receivers. I don't think you're facing two better receivers than you did in Williams and Schwartz last week. So I'm looking for Adam Anderson to be a guy who really continues a hot streak. Dane, who you got, buddy?
I'm not so sure that it will be a stalemate up front. I think everyone's talking about how great Tennessee's offensive line is and how many big bodies they have there. And I don't think Malik Herring cares. And I think Malik Herring is the guy up front because now teams are having a scheme for a Jalen Carter and a Jordan Davis and a Trayvon Walker. Malik Herring's still there, and he is disruptive. I'm going Malik.
Malik Herring getting the honey badger nod from Dane Young there. Coach, Coach, who you got? Mouth-watering player of the week. Who helps the Dogs overcome the balls?
I picked Pickens last week, and he got a touchdown, but he really helped us win the game with all the things he did, drawing all that coverage. But I'm going to go with Zamir White, and the reason is because I just don't know whether Cook's going to be ready with his shoulder. The other guys are certainly efficient and good players, but he's going to shoulder more of the load this week. I'm going with Zamir.
I like them. I like all good picks around. I think interested to see how it all shakes out.
And before we depart, a lot of subplots and kind of back and forth going on this week between Georgia and Tennessee. I'll ask the three of you to give me your thoughts. How the media is going to be focused on the Cade Mays transfer issue, Jeremy Pruitt versus Kirby Smart, lawsuits, all that rigmarole. How much is any of that really affecting or distracting these two teams? Are they using it as motivation? Do they care at all? Or is this mainly just the fans chirping on Facebook and Twitter and the media looking for clicks?
It's clickbait as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Kirby Smart.
Dude, it's on our site.
Kirby Smart. Hey, we don't get paid by the click, FYI.
This is true. This is true.
Kirby Smart said yesterday, and I do think it's true. He understands how the game runs, right? He understands, he says coaches are going to do anything to get a player eligible. I don't think that it's something that's affecting the psyche of anybody. I do believe those players when they say, hey, we still got love for Cade. I think that that's true.
I agree.
So I don't think it's a scenario where there's any hard feelings at play here. I'm sure Georgia wishes he was still on the team. Don't get me wrong, but it is what it is. That's the state of modern college football.
If it were Butch Jones or another coach that does like gimmicky things, I'd say they'd probably run out there with a folding chair, in their hand as they make their run on the field. But that's not what Kirby does.
That's why I asked a question.
It doesn't work that way here. They're focused on doing what they do every day, which is hit people in practice so they can hit people on Saturday.
You're telling me I shouldn't run a 50% off deal at UGASports.com?
A quarter off, I believe, was how much it really was.
Coach, you've been there. You've seen the media try to drive these kind of clickbait narratives and these kind of where the media and the fans are always looking for a fight. They're looking for what they call it, locker room. What's
bulletin board material.
Bulletin board material. I couldn't come up with the word. Yeah. So every team is trying to figure out that every fan base is thinking their team's going to be ultra motivated because Cade either came home finally and he wants to get back at those Georgia guys, or he left and, everybody hates him because he left. I've noticed the players seem, they still interact with Cade on social media. He's still part of a lot of their group chats. I don't think that there's this huge animosity between Kirby and Jeremy. I think they're two type A personalities, but you've been at the center of these type of things. Is this a distraction or is there something real there?
I don't think it is in this case, just because of respect that the players have for Cade and respect that Kirby and self-respect that Kirby and Pruitt have. But, there's certain things that come up in locker room things that somebody will say, like somebody from Florida, like last year they were talking about, he said a squirrel finds a nut or something like that. And that kind of chapped Kirby, I think, chapped everybody around here. But, you can use it a little bit, but it boils down to once you kick off, you're not going to be thinking about that. But after the game, sometime you might say, well, hey, they really inspired us a little bit. But the really good teams, it doesn't bother you.
That's what I want to know. Jake, you want to take us home?
All right, guys, great show today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Shout out to all of our sponsors. We got plenty of them. Remember to go check them out. Roddy, you want to give them one last shout? Give the list them down.
Be sure to check out Athens Ford. Great finance deal they have. Check out Academia Brewing Company for that new caramel cheesecake with apples on it. Our friends at Masada Leather down in 5 Points. Be sure to hit them up. Of course, DR Construction. And speaking of construction, there's also our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors, Ryan Lucia, and his giant new showcase facility. We really appreciate that. I'm eating here at Classic City Eats. I've got the dry rub wings. I know those are a favorite of Jake's, and I'm going to eat every one of them. I'm going to make him stay on the show and watch me eat them all. He doesn't get to duck out of this Zoom call.
You're a sadist.
Our friends at Your Pie with their fantastic new hot honey pepperoni pizza. You've got to try that. So be sure to hit up all of our sponsors. We greatly, greatly appreciate what they do for us, because without them, we would not be doing the show. And quick note, our friends at Athens Ford are actually going to be sponsoring the Watch Along Party. Do not miss the Watch Along Party this weekend. It is going to be a fun one. So check us out.
2 p.m. 12 p.m. next week. You can catch us back here on the YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribing.
Get them subscribed to catch Around the League this Thursday.
Yeah, you got Around the League going on Thursday as well with Coach and Dane and Brent Rollins. So check that out. Get over to UGAsports.com. Got tons of coverage over there. And I want to say quick shout out and send love to the Gulf Coast. Looks like Delta going to be causing some problems down there. So our love and support out to those folks. We'll catch you guys next week, 12 p.m. Tuesday, UGA Sports Live. Thanks for tuning in.